Hello, everyone. Welcome to Transform Now. I'm your host, Michael Marchuk,
And I'm Brad Hairston.
and this is our weekly pulse check of AI and automation news. Before we get started, as you know, all of the links for these will be in our show notes. We're going to get started here with one from TechCrunch, Brad, and it's called, the article's titled, Mark Cuban says AI is, quote, never the answer. It's a, quote, tool. So, do you agree that AI is never the answer and it's just a tool?
I do believe that. I do subscribe to what Cuban's saying here. And by the way, he gave a speech at South by Southwest recently in Austin. That's where this article came from. And yeah, I agree. It's all about augmenting humans. I don't think it provides the full answer in every case, and we can 100% trust it. I think there are some decisions it makes that are less sensitive that we can trust it to make after proving what it's capable of. But yeah, I mean, I'm not surprised Cuban is out there espousing caution and really just trying to give entrepreneurs food for thought around AI. In fact, this article goes on to say that he tells the entrepreneurs that he was speaking to that they need to learn everything they can about AI, that they're going to get behind if they don't get on the ball and really learn as much as they can about it. So, but he, really, and I like the way he puts it. I've heard other people do the same. He positions it as a almost like a free mentor that you can leverage as an advisor or a board member, and test out your ideas, test out your brainstorming products that you're thinking about taking to market. Now, be sure you're doing it safe, controlled environment, because if you're using a freebie model, then that might show up in a search or in a prompt from someone outside. But yeah, I think he definitely understands the technology. And of course, Cuban has made his mark in the world through technology. Of course, then he became the Mavericks owner, and that's how I know him, being a Dallas Mavericks fan. But I think we should pay attention to him, Michael, because this is the guy that, and you know the story, but in 1995, because of his passion for Indiana University basketball, living in Dallas, he wants to hear all the games. He and his buddy come up with a way to listen to every game on the internet. They then sell that capability that they developed to Yahoo 4 years later for $1.4 billion in stock. That's what Cuban got out of it. Now, you remember in 1999, that was before the dot-com boom.
Right.
The story gets even better because Cuban would have lost most of that, but he went and invested a lot of money in a bunch of put options and call options. And of course, the dot-com bubble did bust, but he preserved all of that money that he made from that transaction. So from there, he went and bought the Dallas Mavericks, and the rest is history. Although he sold his controlling interest, and then what did they do? They traded Luka. So it has a bad ending all the way around.
Well, besides his investment in your favorite basketball team, I think the article does make good points, which is something that we've talked about a bunch of times. Well, AI has a lot of really great capabilities. It needs a human to direct them because there's no purpose behind AI except what humans provide to it. So I think this is really a good reminder that we really need to look at that as just as it is. It's a really great tool that we can leverage to augment our capabilities. Okay, speaking of capabilities and augmentation, the next one's from Ars Technica, the website, and the article is titled AI Firms Follow DeepSeek's Lead, Create Cheaper Models with, quote, Distillation. And this was interesting because OpenAI was thrown all up in arms here as they were saying, well, I can't believe DeepSeek took all of our stuff and distilled it and created this new model, blah, blah, blah. without our permission, reality. And when in fact, of course, OpenAI has been grabbing data from all over the internet doing something similar. Anyway, the technique by itself was a novel technique to be able to distill the information or distill the capabilities of these models. So maybe you can walk us through this.
Yeah, distillation, another key term in today's world that we have to come to terms with. I think about 11th grade chemistry when we
Exactly.
distillation. But it is something that really surfaced through what DeepSeek did when they built this model much faster at a much cheaper cost. And it became clear that they were using this distillation method, which I'll talk about in a second. It is not a new thing, however. It was actually first surfaced in 2015, which, 10 years ago, through a white paper that I read a portion of today. So the idea has been around for a while. DeepSeek just took it full bore and benefited from it greatly and really got everyone's attention, especially the financial markets. And they reacted pretty significantly.
Severely. Yes.
And severely. That's a good word for it. So what is distillation? So it's essentially when a company takes a large language model, they call it the teacher model, and they use it to transfer knowledge to and to train a smaller model. So these smaller models, by benefiting from this, they require much less computational load. They can be run on laptops and even smartphones. They do have less functionality than the large language models, but in some cases that's okay. Depending on the application of that technology, it might be fine. But there's a lot of benefit from this. They're transferring knowledge, confidence levels, which the large language models are really good at establishing. They transfer reasoning logic. So you're basically benefiting from the first mover. In this case, OpenAI and companies like that, and benefiting from what they've done and using their technology to create your own. So this is really, as the article said, this is kind of eliminating what people often refer to as the first mover advantage. In this case, it might actually be better to be the second or third or fourth mover. Now, DeepSeek said they train their models from open source large language models from Meta and I think Alibaba, but it did come out, or they've been accused of using OpenAI's models against their terms of service. So distilling knowledge from OpenAI is a no-no. It's just very difficult to regulate that and keep the startups from benefiting from these larger language models that have so much that they can leverage. So it's all about being more cost effective. The first movers spend billions of dollars to create these very sophisticated systems, and these new competitors can catch up really, really quickly by using this distillation method. So it's a term we're going to keep hearing, and it's going to probably increase in significance. And there'll be people screaming about how, it's unethical and people are taking advantage. There'll probably be more lawsuits.
No doubt.
But it's kind of hard when you're suing a company in China. I mean, how does that work out? I don't know if that even can work out. But we'll see.
There are 30 lashes with a wet noodle, right? That's the way it's going to be. And so we certainly see this. And honestly, when you have technology advances that are then spurring on other technology advances, to your point, there may be some first mover advantage to start with, but unless you can keep up with or to take these kind of steps where they're applying different techniques to leverage what's already been done, you're going to run into this kind of situation where potentially a competitor or someone else will come up with these techniques or revise them in such a way that it becomes novel enough to be able to use it. And to your point earlier, I may not need the full-on breadth of OpenAI's magical, massive large language model. I may not need that for the queries that I'm doing, in which case a DeepSeek or some other model that has a distilled, quantized version of it, which can run on my phone, may be just good enough, which is what people are saying. Well, listen, I don't need to have this massive thing. If I can get something that's good enough, or has trained or distilled that information that's just enough for what I use it for, then there's really no need to have that broader active GPU cycles, etc. So anyway, very interesting. We're going to go to our next article, which of course is another one. They include from TechCrunch. That includes OpenAI in it and DeepSeek. So we kind of did start off with that, the TechCrunch talking about AI, jumped to DeepSeek. Now we're doing OpenAI again. This one from TechCrunch says OpenAI calls DeepSeek's let me start that over again. OpenAI calls DeepSeek state-controlled, calls for bans on PRC produced models. And this would kind of go back to what you mentioned earlier. OpenAI, their moat has disappeared in terms of their capabilities. And so now they're going to, I assume, try to lash out at those who are doing it and say, well, don't trust them because of whatever, ban these models, blah, blah, blah. Is this just, sour grapes here, or is there something to be concerned about?
Yeah, this one's got a couple of different angles. First of all, it has nothing to do with distillation.
Right.
This one is broader in the sense that OpenAI is appealing to the U.S. presidential administration. They have their AI action plan that supposedly is coming out in a few months. And so Altman and OpenAI are taking advantage of this opportunity to appeal to the president and the government to say, it's in our best interest if we prohibit the use of these state subsidized and state controlled models like DeepSeek, like what was the other one? Mensa. We talked about it last week.
Yes, there's another one that it was. There's several others, but yes.
Yeah. So I've slept since then, as they say. So this proposal, on the surface seems to be strictly, hey, it's Chinese. We're in a race with China. Let's prohibit them. If you look at the language that they're actually, they've written into this proposal, it says that they are actually, Michael, trying to prevent privacy and security risk, including IP theft. They also say, it says, we're not advocating for restrictions on people using models like DeepSeek. So you can keep using it, Michael. What we're proposing, this is the language from their agreement. What we're proposing are changes to U.S. export rules that would allow additional countries access U.S. compute on the condition that their data centers don't rely on PRC technology that presents security risk. The goal is more compute and more AI for more countries and more people. So this is just thinking about the world, thinking about everybody else. Everyone needs compute. Everyone needs AI.
And I'm sure it's altruistic from OpenAI's perspective, right?
100%. 100%. So any way you slice it, I think their point, we've talked on this podcast, this weekly pulse check about, can you trust, a state controlled or state influenced company like DeepSeek or any of these entities over there? It's a valid concern, and you do worry about the data and the prompts and so forth that it's ingesting from people all over the world, including the US and Europe. So on the surface, I'm not surprised by it. I think they use some creative language to try to make it more like it's just thinking about the world, thinking about everyone that needs compute and AI, and let's not let China chew all that up.
Right. That makes sense. And again, like you said, that this is not only an open AI issue, but now there's some nationalism being brought into all this stuff, which from a technology standpoint doesn't necessarily make sense. It's just technology. It's the application of it. So whether that you call this another an arms race, an AI arms race, or something like that, you can look at it different ways. The reality is that I don't think the moat is going to help hold them any longer. Technology is what it is. The cat's out of the bag, and someone's going to be working with this no matter where they are in the world, coming up with new, novel ways to do this. For all we know, there's some kid in Rwanda right now who's going to come up with the next best version of like a DeepSeek that costs, $1 a year to run. I mean, we just don't know, right? And that's the beauty of this, is that the technology is out there. A lot of it is open source, and the technology and the techniques that they're using have been published, as you mentioned, sometimes a long time ago. So while all this information is out there, is available, I believe there's going to be some people using their creative thinking hats, not just AI to do the work, but actually thinking about this in new and unique ways, to really bring about some interesting revolutions in this technology. So more to come on that for sure. Absolutely. So our last one, we are going to step away from OpenAI. We're going to step away from DeepSeek. We're going to talk about a Business Insider article that I thought was very interesting and has sort of a tangential kind of activity related to data. As we mentioned before, data has been a big deal for training these models, right? Well, how about a treasure trove of data? Let's talk about it. This is from Business Insider. The article is titled, 23andMe has filed for bankruptcy. Here's how to delete your data. Now, this article kind of goes through the concern over the takeovers of the data that may be housed within 23andMe right now as they go into bankruptcy, and who the bidders might be to buy those assets and why that could be troubling. Tell us more.
Yeah, I think this is more than a tangential issue. It's absolutely related to everything going on in the world of AI, data privacy, data confidentiality, data security. And what happens when companies like 23andMe that has DNA data from all of its customers, including me, by the way, I'll get back to that.
Okay.
When they go out of business and all that data is sitting in their enterprise, and the concern is, as this article pointed out, a takeover or sale of the company could mean the sale of that user data, which no customer of 23andMe ever thought about. I certainly did.
Right.
So this article, when you sent it to me, it was frightening to me. I went out immediately and deleted my data from 23andMe and encouraged people I knew in my family to do the same. It is a wake up call. I think, 23andMe was such a great idea, and I really liked it. It wasn't quite as groundbreaking as I expected it to be. I knew a lot of my heritage and family tree and connections and what have you, and most of the people that it identified that I share DNA with, it was like 0.03%.
Right.
It's so small that, okay, it's a guy in Ireland, and I know that my relatives, there's some that came from Ireland and some that came from England and what have you. It wasn't like, oh my goodness, I'm related to, Mark Cuban or something like that. It was stuff that was fairly, blasé. But the things I found even more interesting, I'm just talking about the company and the value from it, is it takes your DNA and it compares you to all the people that have similar DNA, maybe not even you're related to, but just looking at your composition, comparing it to others. And they tell you, by the way, everyone that has this DNA tends to have this type of pattern, like curly hair or whatever. But it's even more interesting. Like for me, it told me that I'm more likely to get bitten by mosquitoes than more people, which I do find that to be true. It also says that I'm most likely to wake up at 7:07 a.m. each morning, which is not far off of what the reality. I literally wake up almost every morning about 7:05, 7:06 on my own before my alarm goes off. So it's stuff like that.
So what you're saying is they're wrong. You're saying that they're wrong that because they said 7:07 and therefore the data is that far off.
So a lot of interesting stuff like that I derived from being on 23andMe and spitting into a tube and sending it so they can find my relatives and all that. But back to the serious point here, it is a concern. It's a concern when you sign all these disclaimers and agreements about your data and they ask you if they can use it for research. They had some pretty incredible objectives as a company. They were literally not just using this to tell you who your relatives are, but looking for patterns, looking for ways to contribute to drug discovery and new ways to deal with health issues. And so I always felt like that was, in a small way, it was contributing to their goals. But yeah, a big data hack, a lawsuit, their stock has dropped through the floor and the company's dead. So yeah, it's something that we should heed to. Absolutely relates to everything going on and with all the data from the internet flowing into these large language models and small language models. I think we need to continue to be wary of that and make sure that we have the right governance and guardrails around what we're doing with AI and with data, not just from the outside, but our own confidential proprietary data. And so, it's always been a concern. This just raises the bar even higher.
So I can see both sides of this potential issue. One being with the data that goes out and is sold to the highest bidder, which honestly sounds a lot like the plot for a James Bond movie. You have millions and millions of people's genetic data up for the highest bidder. Going down that path, there is a potential, and again, for a positive or a negative outcome. For a positive outcome, maybe it is good to have that data now more freely available. Again, just giving the devil's advocate here, to allow more drug discoveries to take place. So you understand patterns that may be in place that others wouldn't necessarily see. And because of the objectives of 23andMe, maybe they just didn't have the right funding or the right people in place to be able to make that happen. But now with that bulk amount of data available, maybe there's a new way to look at it, that they can see some patterns or apply some of these techniques that these other AI models can now leverage in a maybe more positive way to get the outcomes that they had initially been striving for. Obviously, the negative to that is now that if the data does go out to the highest bidder and perhaps a healthcare company or insurance company bids on that, there could be another aspect of, there's a number of people here that we consider to have genetic information that leads us to not want to cover them because of the patterns we've seen related to people who have had health issues or whatnot that are very, very costly. Therefore, this could be an issue for folks who have this genetic data that they may not even know. It may not even be expressed, but because they have these genes, they could be now discriminated against simply because of their genetic code. And so there's again, both sides here. There's a potential positive. There's certainly a potential negative for it. And but the idea that this is now, again, potentially coming up for the highest bidder, it does cause us to think about, well, holy cow, what about the rest of my data that's all over the place? Thinking we're safe in a nice cocoon with our data protected from all this stuff, when in reality, something like this can happen and now becomes, like the highest bidder situation.
Somewhere out there in the world, there's a group that does not like people that wake up at 7:07 a.m. in the morning. And so my data
Spectre's going to find you. Yes, they are.
They're going to come after me. So yeah, I fear that. I really do. So, or the mosquito bitten people, maybe they have a club. And
they're going to send you mosquitoes and they're going to come get you with them.
Bug spray. I'm going to have bug spray vendor coming to my door every day. So
exactly.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, you can certainly go through a bunch of different scenarios here, but that's all the time we have for today. So if you have any questions or anything, go to our website or go to our show notes here and look up the articles yourself and perhaps come up with your own insights on these things. Until next time, thanks for listening.